Have you been hope scrolling lately?
I think it's been fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I've just been feeling so good. And it's funny, you know who actually gave me really good advice? Congresswoman Becca Ballant. I've become friendly with her.
Okay.
And I told her, I was like, oh my God, such great news, right? On Wednesday. I'm like, let's get back to work. And she's like, you can relish it, Katie. She's like, relish the joy for a hot second. I'm like, you're ready to get back to work. And she's like, shh.
Well, because we're traumatized. We're all traumatized.
It is a
I
trauma response to
Yes,
not be able to recognize and appreciate
yes.
the joy when it's there. So I'm
Mhm.
grateful for people like you and Becca and others that are saying, serenity
Serenity.
now, for just like a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and joy and joy and joy, really enjoy the joy. I think it is so rare to have these moments, especially for some reason, obviously it should have dawned on me earlier that it's been a year since the last election because it's an election.
Oh,
But
yeah, that's right.
when that clocked for me, I got really emotional because I just was like, we've been through it in the last year. And the thing that struck me, and I'm curious how you felt, Katie, because you have followed this election very closely. You followed and reported on politics so closely for the last, you know, uh,
No.
long time. Um, but especially, I think this last decade, last like decade of darkness, did you feel the same way that I felt when I saw Zoran do his acceptance speech? When I started to see the results trickle in, I was like able to take a breath, like a full breath. I didn't realize how shallow my breath had been for the last year because I was like, there's finally someone in charge. Because the people who were in charge, we're not even gonna have to name any names. You know who they are. Have not been the necessarily like, the team of Avengers that I would have imagined in, the darkest chapter of America. We sort of famously even know that Chuck Schumer refused to even endorse or even vote for the man who's one of the men who's really going to be the leaders and the faces of the Democratic Party and this resistance project. And it just, for me, cemented just how scary the last year has been. That it's not just been, oh, there's been, our neighbors are being kidnapped. There's so much instability. But that there's been no almost, sort of competent adult in charge of taking care of us as these scary events, sort of unfold. Do you resonate with that at all? How did you feel on Wednesday night?
Yeah, so it has been a decade, right? Because I spent so much time covering and dealing with Trump term 1.0, even leading up to the 2016 November election, right?
Mhm.
And then trying to deal with the atrocities and the insanity and being like, this isn't really fucking happening in Trump 1.0. And then we get, you know, Joe Biden into office, and I'm like, oh, okay. But no, because there's especially for me, the prosecutions, the cases, like
Mhm.
everything that's going on. And then we have the huge letdown in November of 2024. And then it's been like, just terror on steroids since January of 2025.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people that for those of us that are so deeply in this, it can be incredibly traumatic and traumatizing. And it's like when you live in the nuance and you live in the details and the minutia, it's like you're never really out of it. Like everything I'm looking
Mhm.
at is colored one way or another with that type of perspective. I will say this though. I am more interested in the why people got elected and less the who. Let me be very
Mhm.
clear. I'm not trying to take away from the specific people
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
carried this because you needed those people. But I am so interested now in seeing the number of young women who voted for Mondani and Spamberger and Cheryl. I want to look
Mhm.
at the fact that exit polls, I covered this on my YouTube channel yesterday, that Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spamberger actually took 7% of November 2024 Trump supporters and voters and they voted for them. Like,
Wow.
I want that. Like, I want to
Mhm.
know the secret sauce in that. Like, I want to be thoughtful but fast and efficient
Mhm.
about the way that we kind of dissect that.
Mhm.
I am also thinking that throughout all of this, something that we know, you especially, because you've been through your own measure of a total fucking crazy year as well with me. Especially professionally for both you and I, right? For both you and me, right?
But like also glow up,
hello,
up, Katie.
But here's the thing: we have developed, we've developed thicker skin in a good way. We've developed calluses where they need to be. We've developed right? Like think about this, right? Like when you're put under pressure, what happens with a lump of coal? You get a diamond, right?
Yeah.
Like we have been under pressure and we have developed thicker skin, and that just makes us tougher and hardier and ready to fight. And that is, for me, my November 4th of this week kind of takeaway. It's like there's so much to learn, but there's also so much for us to say, yeah, we can kick ass. We've proven it, and we're doing it, and we're clocking it across the country. It's not just in one place. Like if it had just been one election,
right,
I'd say, God, I don't really know. But look where it happened in so many different ways. And that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Yeah.
And again, trying to remember we need to kind of sit in the joy.
Yeah.
And spend some time in it for a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many things I want to double click on that you talked about. One of them is the 7%, right? These Trump to Spamberger, these Trump to Zoran, Mamdani voters. What do we know about them? What do we know about what appealed to them or made them sort of switch, so dramatically this week?
So I haven't actually seen kind of a substantive peeling of the onion on that yet. Although I will say that one of my favorite people is Rachel Jan Faza, who focuses a lot on the Gen Zers, and I'm going to have her. I think it's next week to talk about what she has kind of learned from her listening sessions. But I will say this: I think you can reasonably extrapolate, Liz, from the campaign pillars of affordability, right? Public safety, and for somebody like Abigail Spamberger, for example, reproductive freedom. So even though that may sound a little counterintuitive, those are all very pragmatic things, the way that they are framed. And Mikey Sherrill ran on the same pillars. It's not like she did something totally different. And we also obviously know that Zohran Mamdani ran on a platform very keenly of affordability and this idea of things. I said the other night on election night, I said, sorry, I'm taking a cord. I'll say this very quickly, Liz. I said on this election night kind of live stream I was doing with my friends at the Contrarian, we need to stop labeling these things as progressive, for example. And I said, I don't know why it's so radical to think that getting a livable wage is such a radical progressive thing. Why is it so radical and progressive to think that we should all have affordable health care? It all makes fiscal sense, right? And so I'm trying to urge people, let's stop labeling each other. Because when you label AOC and Mamdani as, quote, progressive, then maybe people in the middle are like, that's way too lefty for me. But if you were to sit and tell somebody in the middle, I'm telling you that if your employees get paid well and that they can afford to live and they're healthy, then they're going to be more productive. You speak in those terms and suddenly people see the dollar signs, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm also trying to work on people about trying to figure out where the labels are not totally helpful, and that we should try to shed those and just kind of focus on the policies.
Yeah.
Right.
I totally agree. I am Canadian, and I can tell you with certainty, AOC and Bernie's policies are centrist policies. They're not radical in most countries, getting healthcare and not dying because a 6-year-old can't get insulin. That is not a radical position, right? It's actually radical for the government not to provide those services, especially if they're collecting taxes, okay? Which this week especially, I'm like, where the hell is all our money going? Because it's being collected, and in most countries, most developed countries, there's a system of giving the government providing services in exchange for that money. That's why you pay taxes. You get something back. And the fact that in this country particularly, it is I think it fuels why so many people are frustrated. And then they think, well, it must be because of immigrants. It must be because of, women. It must be because of everything, this like boogeyman, right? That I think the right really presents to them, which is a compelling, argument if you're struggling. And yeah, so I really love what you said. And what really brought me a lot of joy too was the fact that this was a broad coalition of people. This
Yeah.
wasn't just, a Zoran and an AOC like person in Virginia or in New
Not at
Jersey. I mean,
all.
these
Not at
were
all.
right. And AOC was actually asked at I think it was Democracy Now! Or MSNBC. I can't remember. I was living out, so I was watching all of it. But in an interview with one of those outlets, she specifically was like asked, is Zoran the new face of the Democratic Party? Is socialist, is a socialist Democrat basically the new face of the party? And she pushed back. She said, "There's not one face." And it's all of the people who, who have been elected tonight are very different, and that's a good thing. And I just like wanted to just high five my TV because to me, one of our biggest failures, or not failures, but weaknesses, is that we do a lot of purity politics. We do a lot of, well, if you think this, then you're not part of art, right? If in order to be a progressive, you have to be A, B, C, D, E.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're not progressive enough, you're not part of it. If you're a person who voted for Trump and for who that, label doesn't make sense, then you're not welcome. And that is just not how you build a movement. It's not how you win electorally either. And so I love how we are embracing many perspectives and many
Yeah.
ways of being progressive, and that means something different to different people. I think we need more of that, and we need to celebrate disagreement. It is so normal, actually. It's what you want in a healthy democracy is for not everyone to have the same perspective and have the same opinion. That actually would be a different kind of system. And so I thought that was so wonderful. And to me, that meant that this is um replicable, that isn't just, oh, it's just in New York with this, leftist hot, charismatic leader who's, offering them something that would only work there. I really think there's something going on. Obviously, there's a repudiation of Trump, which is, I also want to talk about with you. But to me, it's just the diversity of the progressive coalition that we saw that really gave me hope.
We'll say this, and this is not to take the blush off the rose at all, Liz.
No, no,
I have
no.
also I
Do
have
it.
also mentally gotten to the point where I am also unabashedly very Machiavellian about things. So my attitude is I want to win,
Yeah.
and I want to win whatever it takes. And once we're back in power and we're able to control those levers of power, we can have some of the more nuanced conversations that are
Hmm.
way beyond due. But I also am saying too, I don't want to go back to what we had before. I want to reform. I don't
Yeah.
want to rebuild. I want to reform. I don't need
Hmm.
to rebuild something that didn't work before, because whatever we were doing before, I mean, that's the definition of insanity, is doing something over and over again when it's not
Yeah.
working. We
Hmm.
can't do that if that means shedding some of our more established electeds. I guess that's what happens, right? But
Hmm.
I am of the school of thought these days, and again, unapologetically, I don't want to sit here and have, this like kind of almost like philosophical argument about something, when the reality is we run the best candidate we can in the jurisdiction that they are, and we get into those places. And I'm talking everything, Liz, not from just the top down. I'm talking from the down up. I'm talking down
Yeah.
ballot up. I'm focusing a lot on state, municipal, local races. I give a shit so much about those right now because I have seen how incredibly impactful and powerful it is to have a governor, a mayor, an attorney general
Mm.
that is a Democrat that is fighting against this shithole administration for the last,
Mhm.
and if this guy lives for another 3 years, which I don't think he will, but if he does, I need to make sure that we have
Yeah.
strong people if we're not in majority control in DC. So I'm
Mm.
also making sure that we're running the best candidate possible for where we are. And a lot of people may say to me, Katie, that's a really kind of in maybe toxic and very kind of strong way. I'm sorry, you don't. That's the
Right.
wonderful thing about a democracy. You don't have to share my thought,
Yeah.
but I am very hardcore about this because I kind of feel like Democrats get in their own way sometimes
Yeah.
when it comes to this. We almost let what is it? We let perfect be the enemy of good, and we cannot do that right now because we
Mhm.
don't have that luxury of being able to do that right now.
Yeah. So what are and I agree with you. I think that we are I mean, the thing that I found the most frustrating, I think, over the last 10 years is, like, we have the best policies, but we lose. It's just it's almost embarrassing, actually, that we're losing with the best, and not when I say the best, I don't even mean that subjectively. I mean, with the most popular policies. And somehow we lose. And some of the people, yeah, that we've been running against are losers, are incompetent, are yeah. So I feel very deeply embarrassed about that, and I feel that it is really important for us to not only know what kind of policies we're doing, but have a better strategy. And that's where I come back to I think what Zoran represented was a 2020s strategy. I feel that the Chuck Schumers, the Nancy Pelosi's, as much as I am grateful for all of the things that they've done, like, I don't want to take away from any of that. They could never be elected today. And that's not because they're old. It's because I fully believe that the next president will be an influencer. I think it'll 100% like be it's already a totally different, game. And we saw with Zoran, obviously has a lot of skills and sort of qualities that led to his popularity and ultimately his win. But he was polling at 1%, right? He knew how to use the algorithm. He knew how to use media. He was an influencer. He wasn't running as a politician. He was running as an influencer. And ultimately, that's how he got there. And I would argue that Trump was the first influencer politician. Like, he really deployed. I mean, he just understands media and understands digital media in a way that far surpasses sort of how anyone is able to do it. And so I want to see more. Not obviously, I want to see more young people. I want to see more people of color. I want to see more women. But I also want to see more savvy, right? And 2020 modern people who understand how people consume media, who people understand how people understand politics right now. And it is a very, very different ballgame than it was even 5 years ago, but especially 10 years ago. So wait, what are some of these state races that we should be paying attention to, Katie?
Well, I mean, we have, I don't know, more than 26 gubernatorial races that are going to be up next year or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a wild number. I had Ophelia Heskalon from the Democratic Governors Association the day before. It feels like it was a long time ago, Liz, but it was just Monday, the day before the Tuesday races. And she was like, look, she's like, we have these two gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey, but then we've got like 20 or something or 30 something that are up in 2026. I mean,
Right.
these are the times where, you and I and everybody who's tuning in right now, where we become incredibly powerful because we become the people that can disseminate information about candidates and about the issues
Mm,
that they're standing for, especially in our own backyards, right? There's only so much that we can canvass and take care of in and of our own right. And that's why I'm calling on all of my followers and my subscribers to really start paying attention to things that are happening in their own backyards. And yes, all politics is local, but I do
mm-hmm.
think that people are a little complacent about races that are happening. Like, for example, in Pennsylvania, the 3 Supreme Court justices won their retention vote. And I tell people in Florida, we have all of these Florida Supreme Court justices and appellate court justices that are always up for retention votes. And people that are voting are like, oh, fuck it. And they just say yes. I'm like, no, 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 no. We have
Mm,
Supreme Court justices in Florida that are now advocating for fetal personhood, the idea that a fetus is a person. And that's one of their ways of being able to fight against reproductive freedom. Pay attention to the people when they're doing that. But in
mm-mm,
fairness to everybody, because you have lives and everything that's going on, that's when I think it's really incumbent upon you and me and others to use our
mm-hmm.
platforms to educate about what the issues are. And so that's why I'm really focusing on, like, if there's a big race that's coming up, like in, Indiana or something, I'll bring somebody on the show and I'll talk about it
Right.
because I really think people will understand, okay, maybe I'm not voting in Indiana, but maybe I know people there. Maybe that issue is being replicated in my own city. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we need to be paying attention to. But I also say this, um, Donald Trump in and of himself doesn't know the first thing about fucking social media. He just has somebody around him that knows how to deal
Right.
with it, right? So, which I think makes him totally different than Mondami. And I think Mondami knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to
Right.
social media. But what I do think is this: we are woefully behind when it comes to competing against the far right MAGA media ecosystem. And that's
Mhm.
something that I spoke to Adam Mockler about on my YouTube channel today, which is we need to start stacking hard quantity and quality in building up our own media ecosystem, because we are just starting to really scrape the surface
Mhm.
with the truth to combat the disinformation on digital. We
Mhm.
do the most and the best that we can, but there's not a lot of us that are out there. And part of it, Liz, is because that far right MAGA media ecosystem has so much money funding it.
Yeah.
We have all of these content creators, and you know this really well, a lot of content creators that are just barely making ends meet, and they're
Mhm.
doing it in a pro-democracy space, versus on the other side, you have all these
Mhm.
people that get all this money, a lot of it
Mhm.
dark money, to be able to do what they're doing. And so we really need to also support the
Yep.
content creators and our people that are really fighting in the pro-democracy space, because you just said it. It's how Donald Trump, Mondami, and others are able to reach voters in places that they otherwise wouldn't usually do with your, I'm sorry to say, a Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and others.
Yeah. And this is why being on this live, being a subscriber of Katie's Substack and her YouTube channel, all of these things truly are making a difference. There's so many people who, and I feel this way all the time, where I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing anything. You are doing a lot just by literally being a subscriber to these content creators, and uplifting their content, even giving a like, giving a comment, sending it to a friend. We cannot tell you how much that means and how much that helps,
Yep.
because Katie is absolutely right. The view on the right is that the mainstream media was biased and was liberal. And so they've been building this ecosystem for years, over a decade. And to Katie's point, they are dealing with, billionaires obviously love what they're doing, making us all pay for their subsidies and for their yachts while we pay taxes for nothing. So, yeah, they're really well funded, but the difference is we have you, and that just makes such a tremendous difference. And on your point about Donald Trump, yeah, like, does he understand social media? You're probably right, or you're dead on the money. I think what he understands, though, is attention. He understands how to
Yes.
capture attention. And at this point, yes, social media is the way that people are consuming their news. It's the way that they're connecting with people. It's the way that they are even, I think, like expressing themselves. But I think more than that, we are living in an attention economy. It's all about who has attention. And whether it's someone else doing his tweets, although, there's a lot of typos in his tweets, so maybe he is doing them himself. But I think there's definitely a huge digital team behind him, but he understands how to capture attention. And Zoran, how have you thought of some of the people who have said he's like a mini Trump? That Zoran is a mini Trump because he does all these stunts just like Trump. For example, when he did Tai Chi at the senior center in Chinatown, he did it in a suit, and
Donald,
someone
Donald Trump,
commented.
his fat lard ass, could not do a fucking Tai Chi if somebody was putting a gun to his head and told him to fucking do it. Spare me. No, no. It's like an apples to orange comparison. Are you joking? Please. Anybody who says that, we need to have a conversation, because they need to get their eyes adjusted. I mean, the toddler in diapers, the toddler in
Right,
chief could not do that. He
right,
couldn't do the
right.
scavenger hunt that
Mhm.
Mondami did, which was an
Yep.
amazing idea to do. You know what Mondami did? This is it. And yes, it is an attention economy, and Mondami knew that. Mondami showed that he loved his city. What
Um,
Republicans are against shit. They want to tear shit down, literally. They want to tear stuff down. They want to be
mhm,
against. They want to be against gay people. They want to be against women. They want to be against minorities. They want to be against, right? But
mhm,
when somebody steps up and says, I want to be for something. I love something. I love my
mhm,
city. I want to be here for my city. It doesn't have to be New York, Liz. It could be, some small town somewhere. When you show that, that resonates with people.
mm,
That means to me that you're going to care about what happens to the infrastructure because you love that city.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about the democratic process is if you just did it and you lied to get elected, they will get you out of office the next
Yeah.
time we can,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
accountability checks. I know
Right.
we feel like they don't exist anymore because of everything we've been going through with convicted felon Donald Trump, but the accountability checks are there. But when you find somebody who has the authenticity, and that's my focus too, the
Yeah.
authenticity of a candidate is so important.
Mm,
And again, we maybe are all snowed by these candidates. I don't think so, because I
mm,
feel like, there's enough along the way that we can backstop them if they were full of shit
mhm.
when they were running for office. But in the meantime, let's go on faith and believe that these people are
Yeah.
legitimately doing what they've promised that they want to do.
Yeah. I think just on a purely uh like political strategy level, the increase in serotonin that we got from the election night, even if nothing amounts of it politically, like let's say that all, which is probably, very unlikely to be the case, but let's say they all tank, right? Like they don't fulfill any of the promises and they all go, they become neo-Nazis. Like that would just be like, the most unlikely scenario. But let's even go with that worst case scenario. I think that the well-being boost to people to be able to see a fair and free election, that in itself, and then see it obviously go the way that we hoped for it to go, and see leaders who, to your point, are happy and are joyful. And I think a lot about the flight attendants, when there's turbulence, they're smiling, so you're like, okay, it's going to be okay. That's what I felt like watching him and watching these beautiful acceptance speeches. So I think yeah, but I think a lot of people had given up on democracy. I don't know if anyone in the chat wants to um share, but that's my feel, that it did something. I don't know. Also, some people were saying this is how Gen Z are getting their Obama moment, that when I was in college and Obama got elected, it was such a boost. And I think there were, all obviously a lot of things that were positive that were happening, but it was this belief in democracy, this belief in that there were good politicians, that the government could be good, that things could be fair. And I think, you think about Gen Z that were born into Trump being the president. They might not even remember anyone else. This was like their Obama moment, which I thought was like really sweet. And I think could be truly, sort of it really could be life altering. But yeah, are you scared of
So
this being our brat moment, and then
no,
it just
no. And I am, and trust me, I am one of the most pragmatic pessimists that exists. So what I like about what you just said is this, because that was the first time I heard about the Obama comparison. Here's the thing. One of the things that I love getting when I speak to Rachel Jan Faza is the following. She talks about what Gen Z's thinking, and one of the things she says to me is that they don't feel seen. That
yeah,
it's not just they don't feel it's not just they feel politically homeless. They just feel
yeah,
kind of homeless at all. Like they don't really know
uh-huh,
where they belong. And I think for me, what I love is I'm looking at the numbers of young women. I'm looking at the numbers of minorities that came forward to vote, especially
mm-hmm,
in New York. I'm looking at the Latino community that came back into the Democratic fold to vote in
mm-hmm,
places like Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and others. I'm looking at the turnout in California for Prop 50, letting the people vote to decide what they wanted to do about the redistricting efforts there. This all, Liz, came on the heels of one of the most successful movements of our lifetime of No King's Day 2.0. The fact that we could get 7 million people
mm,
in more than 2,500 events to be able to get together on the same day, I feel like that carried us into November 4th, which
mm,
is why all of that hard work that has been done,
yeah,
that's the type of energy that I think says to the Gen Zers, we see you, we hear you. This is your moment, right?
yeah,
This is your moment to understand that the buy-in into democracy isn't what has been sold to you through the Joe Rogans, the Andrew Schultzes, the Theo
mm-hmm,
Vaughns, the Charlie Kirks, whatever. That is not America.
yeah,
This is your America, the total melting pot, super diverse, immigrant built fabric. Like, that is your America. And that's what people voted for. But at the
Yeah.
same time, to your point, it wasn't replicated across the country in the same candidate, because that's not the Mikey Sherrill, Abigail Spanberger
Mm,
setup or
mm,
framework. But they did say, we understand these issues are important, because if you don't have affordability, if you don't have access to a livable wage, if you don't have the ability to feel safe in your communities, then who gives a shit
yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're 18 or 80,
Mhm.
right? It's not going to make a difference. And so I feel like it all kind of was
Yeah.
intertwined, but they each stood on their own laurels in and of themselves.
Right, right. And one of the big, I keep wanting to, like, go into 3 different directions. One of the things that I thought was really wonderful about the New York campaign is that there's and I, interviewed, Zoran, a couple days ago, and one of the things he talked about, but, and it's been sort of covered, is this idea that his campaign not only became really, galvanizing for, younger people, but it actually became a way for them to meet and to or to just hang out and sort of leave their house. And one of his big sort of talking points or pillars or policy proposals is this idea of bringing more third spaces and sort of getting people together again, and New York City needing to sort of invest in that infrastructure. But in a way, his campaign sort of became fun, which is how I remember the Obama campaign. That people
Mm.
were volunteering, and it was cool. It wasn't, canvassing obviously is cool. We believe that here. But it had this sort of, yes, it's a sort of cool factor. Being able to volunteer, to be close to this movement had such a, I don't know, just cachet, I guess. And that's why I
That
also,
whole generation
yes,
has gone through the COVID, right? And for a lot of
right.
that generation, their very first presidential election was 2016.
It's crazy.
So for
Yeah.
them, the framework or the context has been that polarized 2016 election, right?
Mhm.
Think about also this. I love to stay in touch with you in any way I can, but nothing beats it when you and I are together, right?
Yeah.
There is something very palpable about that. That's why No King's Day 2.0 was so great, because
Mhm.
we literally were with strangers, but in common purpose.
Mhm.
And that is why I think people said bringing people together the way that Mondani has is a way of making people feel like they're united and in this together. Because when you do that, you have a true sense of community. You
Yeah.
literally have a sense of community
Mhm.
versus maybe just gaming the whole time or only being on, a
Yeah.
screen with each
Right.
other, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what Trump did. That's what Trump did. I mean, Trump rallies, and I've, talked about this on live, where I have a lot of friends whose families are supportive of him, and that it replaced going to church. That watching
Mm.
on Sundays, they would even if they couldn't go to a rally in person, they would watch it on TV. They had Trump Christmas trees that instead of putting Jesus, in the Christmas tree, it
Oh,
was now Trump. And I know it's sickening for people who don't support him, but I think it's important to think about the sort of form of that, and the what that represents. And I think he did represent, for a lot of disaffected Americans, this sense of community. And you would go to a Trump rally, and it was fun. There was music, there were people who were having a good time. And I think that is just something that we can't underestimate, especially now. I mean, especially with how dark things are. To your point, the No King's Day is such a repudiation, of that darkness. It's such a, and it's not a, we're gonna make things more fun and happy. It's, we are embodying that promise in the way that we're organizing, which I think, comes back to this idea of tolerance and this idea of, embracing difference within each other, that we can't be preaching that, in our policies and in our, policy proposals and papers and online, but then not, sort of embodying that thesis, and that ethos, I guess, in the way that we organize politically.
Well, think about when you were there at No Kings D 2.0, where I was, everybody was different. They were
Yeah.
different ages, different colors, different backgrounds, different religions. It was just different. But
Mhm.
everybody there was there to be able to celebrate and to advance and progress in democracy. That was
Mhm.
it. There was
Mhm.
no other agenda at all.
Mhm.
That's all
Mhm.
it was.
Mhm.
And that was really cool because that's one of the few places you can go where there isn't that level of uniformity, right?
Yeah.
Where there isn't uniformity in a way that the only thing is uniting people is the sense of purpose and the sense of community. I also think, Liz, the other thing too is this. I think that people, when you see how they're reacting to the atrocities that are being perpetrated by this administration under the
Mhm.
guise of immigration enforcement,
Yeah.
I am stunned to see everyday Americans stepping up to be everyday heroes, right?
Mhm.
Because they are filming and videoing and intervening. And as a lawyer and as somebody who wants everybody to be safe, just, be careful when you're doing
Yeah.
this. But think about that level of being activated enough to
Mhm.
care. Like I saw a TikTok or an IG reel the other day of just a suburban mom in a Chicago suburb who was just driving and following an ICE vehicle. And it pissed the guys off so much that these dumbasses got out of their ICE car and went up to her and started threatening her. She wasn't doing anything. She wasn't
Mhm.
honking. She wasn't
Mhm.
tailgating them. She was just videoing them when they were going places. And one of them was like, "You look like you need to go home to your kids." And she's basically like, "Fuck off." And I went to her IG, I went to her Instagram profile or TikTok profile, and it was like, not a lot of followers, maybe 15, 20 posts, Liz, of just her kid and like her family.
Oh.
Like this
Yeah.
wasn't some huge influencer. It
Mhm.
wasn't somebody who was like a big, like, organized part of a big group.
Yeah.
That is what we are seeing now too. I think
Mm.
all pendulums is they have to come back another way eventually, Liz. They
Mm.
have to swing back eventually.
Mhm.
Gravity, nature, physics is never
Yeah.
going to let that fucking pendulum stay where it is. And so, in large parts,
Mhm.
Donald Trump is actually the reason
Yeah.
why we are successful, and
Yeah.
not because we are necessarily fighting back against
Mhm.
him. To your point,
Mhm.
it was a rebuke and a repudiation of him, but I look at it differently. We're doing the opposite of what he stands for. We're doing the opposite of what he wants this world to be, and that's
Mm.
why you're seeing it start to come back this way.
Mm. Ugh, my heart is broken. We have a listener, Miriam, who says just now in LA, ICE just kidnapped a little child and took away and took them away from her grandma. I mean, that's just like, yeah, we're witnessing
Oh,
such trauma, like traumatizing things. And I think that, to your point, this feels like it is complicated. It feels like, well, how are we going to fight this regime? How are we going to overcome this? And I think, to your point, it is by doing what feels natural for us as good as good neighbors, right?
yep.
And what you're describing in some of these situations with ICE, we saw it in New York. I mean, I feel like this is my hope scrolling, is like that video of when they went to Canal Street and tried to
Yes.
snatch some of those immigrants. And the lady with the polka dot dress and her tote
Her
bag
business
coming back
casual
from work.
tote in her sneakers, and she's like, "Not in my fucking
Yes,
city," right?
literally.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
that is, that's what resistance looks like. That's what heroes look like. And I think it's really important to point that out. So, what is your, yeah, like, legal, I mean, just you're such an you have so much expertise in so many regards. What is your advice if someone who's on this live that is listening and sort of witnesses an abduction or witnesses an ICE agent? What are the steps?
Well, I mean, we're seeing it in real time, and people are doing the right thing. To video what is happening is important. It's interesting because I've seen different schools of thought on this, and this is less legal than, although it does have some legal implications, but a lot of people are like, you shouldn't ask them what their names are or whatever. But look, I think it's at the point where people are asking just so that they can make sure that there's accountability for where these people are, because if not, they go into a black hole where nobody can ever find them again. I mean, these are like these are like foreign country disappearances that we've read about and heard about in history. They're happening right now in our American streets. But if you at a safe distance are able to record what is happening, I obviously can't tell people to actually physically intervene because I don't want people to get either hurt or arrested. But I will say this, it is amazing too to see Good Trouble and how people are actually having their own version of resistance. The Subway sandwich guy got acquitted yesterday. The guy in DC who threw the sub on the federal agent. I'm not telling anybody to throw anything at any federal agents. Please do not do that. What I'm trying to say, though, is juries are not returning indictments right now. Grand juries are not for certain offenses and for people getting arrested based upon these things. Jurors are not returning guilty verdicts either. They're understanding that guy was just fucking over it, right? And also it was absurd because it was a sub sandwich, right? And it was, and it's just no words.
Yeah.
But
protest in absurd ways.
but people need, but you know what happens is too, Liz, and this is also very powerful, what this young woman, Miriam, just did here in our chat by bringing this to our attention, right? We have to stand as witnesses, literally to things that are happening, but also we need to be historians too. We need to, this is now a part of our oral history as well. Like we need to document this because these are the things that I believe are also going to be evidence. And I've said this too. I want my candidates, especially national, to pledge that they are running for office. And part of what they will do is have accountability hearings for what is happening right now.
Yeah.
You can decide, you can make the referrals and let the judicial system do what it needs to do. But at a minimum, I need people to be held accountable for what they are doing to Americans right now and people and humans. And so I want my candidates to make a promise that if they're elected to office, to Congress, that they are going to demand accountability hearings for what we're seeing from these federal agents. You have to be able to know that you standing there and videoing it and being a part of this, that there's going to be something for it, that it's going to be worth it. Because if not, yes, we do it for ourselves, but if not, like we need to be able to know that there's going to be a hammer for what has happened right now.
I had chills. What you just said is so important. And it is literally, if you have a phone in your pocket, you have so much power. Even if you don't, you can still document and you can do so much, right? But yes, you don't even have to, if it feels unsafe for you to put your body on the line, just by using your phone and videotaping what's going on, you are making such a difference. And I think about, what happened in Gaza, that it's because we had so many images. It's because we had so many videos that were refuting the things that were being said by governments that didn't want the truth to come out and for their atrocities to continue. It's because of those people, you do have so much power, and I will say, as a white woman, use that social currency, like people, like white women are, because of the society that we live in, a lot less likely to be harmed than other demographics of people. And what I have seen, I've been sort of happy to see so many videos in my feed of these women in like Lululemons, and just like in flip flops going off.
Yes.
And again, you don't even have to become physical, but just with their presence and putting their body in between, people really have been successful. And so, yeah, you use your social currency, use that privilege. Often we say privilege, check that privilege. No, invest that privilege. I think it's such an important time actually to take stock of how much power we have compared to other people, and to put that privilege to good use. I know makes me feel a little less powerless when I do it. But yeah, I love that, we're all historians right now. That do you think that there's going to be a Nuremberg kind of trial? I mean, I can't imagine, unfortunately, that these abductions won't end up leading to deaths. I just, we saw even today someone being, I think, tasered or having a seizure. I mean, that video it has come across my feed.
Horrible.
It was very difficult to watch, and so I didn't read. I don't know if anyone knows exactly what happened, but this was the father in his car. So, I don't. Yeah, I guess I don't see this not escalating. And yeah, the idea that there'll be trials, but then yeah, I'm like, will Chuck Schumer, put Republicans on trial? I don't think so.
There's a reason why. There's a and I'm going to post it later on my IG, but I'm sure people have seen it, Liz. There's a reason why there's a video circulating of Steve Bannon
Uh,
saying that if they don't win in 2028, that he says to this room, you're going to be in prison and I'm going to be in prison too. It
mm,
shows that they all
they
know,
know
Liz, that what they are doing is wrong.
wrong.
It is such a consciousness of guilt statement to make. If you and I were somewhere, we would never announce to a room, you are all going to be in prison with
Yeah,
us, because we're not doing anything for
yeah.
which we go to prison. But
Mm-hmm.
isn't it pretty obvious that they know what they're doing is wrong? So what they're trying to do is Bannon is trying to tell people, vote Republican so that I don't go to prison. I don't give a fuck about you, Bannon. So, and you should have been in prison, but for your pardons, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear it. So that, I guess it just goes to show that there will be some measure of accountability that way. But I'm talking about them all. I'm talking about the masked agents. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the ones that have the balls not to wear the mask. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about the people from Gregory Bovino to the Kristi Noems to the Marco Rubios. I'm talking about all of them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what? And if you don't have the balls to do it, then maybe you're not fit to be serving in that next Congress.
Yeah.
The rules of engagement have changed, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
can't keep on thinking that we're still operating with the rules from 2020. The adults
Yeah.
have left the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we cannot think that we're going to be doing the same rules of engagement. It's changed. And you know
It's
what I
changed.
hate?
Yeah.
I hate when they're like, "Oh, well, Katie, that's such a radical thing to say." That's what the
No,
Republicans
it's
have been saying
realistic.
the entire fucking time. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know why it's okay for the Republicans to do it and win, and it's not okay for us to say it and win. I don't get it.
100%, 100%. And I was talking to my dad last night, and there's this old metaphor, very, very common on cable news, where people will say, Democrats are playing chess or Democrats are playing checkers and Republicans are playing chess. This sort of idea that the Republicans just have much more, sophisticated strategy, and Democrats are just kind of going it day by day. And my dad was quoting someone who said, no, it's not Democrats are playing, checkers and Republicans are playing chess. It's Donald Trump took the board and flipped it, and that's the game, right? Like, so we're still going, but you can't do. It's like, are you insane? I mean,
You're
coming
totally
back to
right.
it's doing the same thing over and over again. They have flipped the board. We are not playing like the rules don't even apply because the board is gone. And so, when you're talking about the board, it makes me feel like I'm crazy. But what we
But you
have
feel
is
like you're getting
people,
like gaslit. But here, remember
Gaslit.
this. Think about this for a second. Remember how absolutely, quote, radical we all thought it was for the January 6th Select Committee to do the hearings the way that they did? Do you remember when they were televised and they played the video excerpts from the depositions? They brought in our friend Harry Dunn and Mike Fanone and others to testify. Do you remember how
Yeah.
absolutely Cassidy Hutchinson, you remember how absolutely almost like jaw-dropping radical that seemed for Congress to do?
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to
Yeah.
2025. Are you joking that that would end up being in my
Yeah.
mind, that's the least
Yeah.
that Congress should be doing.
Right.
That
Right.
is like so like tepid
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
Why? Because to your point, he flipped the table a la Teresa Giudice style, flipped the table, everything flew in the air, and none of the chips and none
Yeah.
of the pieces
Yeah.
match anymore,
Yeah.
Liz.
Yeah.
It's like checkers and chess and
Yeah.
mahjong and dominoes, and it's all
Yeah.
together now, and it's all fakakta. And that's the reason why we just have to say there's no rules. So let's go.
Yeah.
Let's rumble. Let's go.
100%. And I think back at what 2020, should have been. I think it should have been a recognition, right, of everything that had gone wrong. Because let's all remember, the first Trump administration, obviously this one is far, far worse, but it was really bad. There were a lot of things that they could have done to hold people accountable for the things that they did. And that
They should have
wasn't
just
done.
impeached him. If they had impeached him
mean-
and convicted him, we wouldn't have had to deal with this shit again. But whatever.
Exactly. And I think back at what the, sort of energy and sort of the vibe was in 2020. And it was like, we got to come together. We're so divided and we got to find agreement. And if that is the energy you are bringing to the fight, you are bringing a spoon to a gunfight. And I feel that I could be so much more useful and so much more engaged as a citizen if I knew that there were people who were bringing the right weapon, not real weapon. If you're listening, don't deport me. But I think the right
NSA
kind
watch
of
list.
Yeah. I really do have to be careful what I say and do, but we all do. But yeah, I just can't, I guess, express how meaningful it is to feel like there are leaders who are recognizing that the board was flipped, who are not like gaslighting us, being like, well, we're just gonna keep going the way we've been doing things. When clearly that is just, it's scary. I think it just has been scary. I've been scared, and it felt good to like admit it.
No, listen, and that's why I'm always saying we have to give each other grace. I say that. I said it I was on a live with Miles Taylor before I hung out with you. We have to give each other grace. We're not always going to be revving at 1,000 every day, all day long. We have to and that's when we have a community here at Substack. We have a community at large. Some of us have never even met each other in person. Some of us don't even know what we look like, right?
Yeah.
But at least we're together in community, which is what I think makes it less scary. And when people, I like to say now, we take our despair and we turn it into determination. We want to be determined. Doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means that you have a sense of purpose and you're moving forward. We have to keep on moving forward. And in order to do that, sometimes it's just one step, big or small, but we have to keep it going that way. My other favorite saying is, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. So people may feel overwhelmed. They may feel like it's just too much. And I always say, eat an elephant one bite at a time. Just do one small thing, one thing out of the big mound of stuff that it has to be, and you're still moving forward.
Yeah, one day at a time, baby. Robert says, he said, sorry, there's so many comments. You guys are on fire. Give grace, but not to Deborah Messing, which is a funny comment. I love everything you've said, Katie. I love like this, Katie. I think that you are so awesome. I have been a fan of yours for so long. You had my favorite show on MSNBC. I loved going on your show. And I have to say, I love this version of you and everything that it has unleashed. And like, I feel like I'm witnessing a really beautiful blossoming, and you having, becoming a butterfly and spreading your wings. And I feel really grateful that you exist. I feel really grateful that you did this live with us. Everyone should go subscribe to Katie's amazing Substack. She has a spectacular Instagram account, YouTube channel. She's, as you can tell from this live, on it. And I think you do this thing where you are really, 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 really fucking smart, but you're also really, really, really hopeful. And I think that that is like a very rare quality that I know I needed today and that I need every day. So thank you for yeah, giving us like filling our brains with important facts, but also filling our hearts with hope.
I say at the end of all my YouTube videos, I say, be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. But lately I've also been saying, I'm off to rattle cages. Let's go rattle cages together because that's what we have to
Mm.
be doing. You know,
Yeah.
you have, I think you have to give, um, value to all the emotions.
Yeah.
I think they all have value. So that's why I'm always honest with
Hmm.
and transparent with my followers and my subscribers. Um, and there's a video that should be up probably very soon, Liz, about a guy that I interviewed where I cried because he
Mm.
specializes. Well, I won't even say he specializes. He wrote a book about grief and how to navigate grief.
Wow.
And not to Debbie Downer on us, because I know we were kind of saying
No,
how
no.
joyful are, but I'm just giving it as an example that those are still conversations I have because I do think that people are also grieving things in big and
Yeah.
small ways right now. And I think that people need to understand how to navigate it
Yeah.
or how to be honest or how to understand that that emotion has value too.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I appreciate it, Liz. You are one of my favorite people, and I can't wait to see you again in person. But in the meantime, I'll take this. I'll take
Yes.
this.
Please come back. We should do this again. This is a fun Friday
Absolutely.
hang.
Yes.
And yeah, I agree on just grief, on all the feels. Like let yourself feel all the feelings, as long as you're letting yourself feel hope. You know, I think
Yes.
back at what you were saying in terms of, you know, these moments in history. You know, that there's that the pendulum swings. You know,
It
I've been
does.
thinking a lot about the 2010s and how hopeful it felt, and you know, coming back to
Mm,
this sort of Obama victory idea. But what preceded that was pretty hard times, right? We had a war that was completely, you know, that the you know, that the American people were completely lied to about, and we had two Bush presidencies, right? This was a difficult time, and look at what it led to. And so I'm hoping, this is my prediction, okay? Things got weird in 2015, and then it got worse and worse and worse. And I think we're at the end. 2025 is going to be the end of that chapter. And 2026 is going to be like the pendulum swinging and things becoming not just more normal. To your point, we're not just going to go back. We're going to build something even better. And that's my prediction for 2026, which is only 2 months away, which is insane.
that's
Is that
wild.
I think that this has been that period, and it's been tough, and we thought we were bouncing back in 2020. We didn't. But I think next year, 2026 is going to be our year, Katie. I feel it.
For everybody.
For everyone.
And everybody obviously is already, almost everybody is probably subscribing to Liz's Substack. If not, do so. If you're here through my Substack, make sure you're following Liz. Liz also is probably one of the best writers that we have
Oh my God. Thank you.
ever and has the most amazing pod, has always had amazing pods, but right now
Thank
is
you.
flying solo and kicking ass on her pod. So
Thank you,
obviously, you
Katie.
guys can tell it's a mutual love fest, but I'm so grateful. And thanks for having me on. And thanks for letting
Yeah.
me be with you on Friday. I'm in Denver, so it's a little earlier
Yes.
here. So thanks for
Yeah.
letting me spend your early evening with you guys
Of
on the East Coast.
course. Have a great weekend, Katie. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for being there. We got this.
Yeah.
Hearts.
Bye,
Love.
everybody.
Bye.